So starting us off with our Juneteenth history is going to be Dr. Willie Davis, and he is going to talk about the beginning of the 400 years of African American history, starting with the year 1619. And then following Dr. Davis will be Mr. Ernest Connerly, who will talk about the Juneteenth history, starting his timeline at 1865, moving us forward with what happened, why we celebrate, and everything you want to know. After that, ladies and gentlemen, young men and young women, I am going to, myself, Deborah Plummer, will talk about the Lansing Juneteenth history, how we got started, how the committee got started, where we got started, and how we progressed to where we are now 27 years later. After myself, it's going to be Ms. Mary Gibbs, and she will start us off with the Juneteenth essay information. Many parents have questions about the essay contest. Many students want to participate, and we want to share with you as much information as possible on Juneteenth essay during this program. So she will give you all the details on Juneteenth essay, including award values, and those may change from time to time as money increases. Of course, our award values will increase, and then we will finish up our program today with Mr. Leonard Rusher. Mr. Rusher is a specialist in scholarships. He is working with the committee directly to help young people get their funding together for their college education, and he has much to say, much to share, and there's much to learn about that. So we thank you for your time and your attention to this program.
Hotep, greetings, assalamu alaikum. I am Dr. Willie Davis, Wabaku Wakweku, and I'm the director of All Around the African World Museum and Resource Center. I would like to talk a little bit about the history of African Americans in the Americas up until 1865. If I go back some 2,000 years ago, Ivan Sertima wrote a book called They Came Before Columbus. And in it, he proves that African Americans were here some 2,000 years ago. One is through some huge stone heads found in La Venta and Tres Zapote in Mexico that are covering dated to be over 2,000 years old or some 8 to 10 feet tall, with definitely African features and weighing several tons. If we even look in 1504, the Spanish and the Portuguese actually brought slaves over to replace the Native Americans in the Caribbean and Central America to mine gold, because they had to replace the Native Americans who could escape because they knew the lay of the land, and they were again indigenous, whereas African Americans were not. So then we moved to 1619. In 1619, some 20 and odd Negroes, as was recorded, landed at Fort Comfort in Virginia. They have the distinction of creating a controversy of whether or not they were indentured servants or were they slaves. In 1641, we had Massachusetts passing the first slave law legalizing slavery. So up until then, there were no laws that legalized slavery within the United States. So maybe they may have been a little reluctant to announce themselves as slaves. And several of them actually became free, many of them after 1620 itself. So then we go into again looking at some of the 1600s, and we also see a physical resistance to slavery. In fact, in 1663 at Gloucester, Virginia, you had a slave revolt. Later, you had in the 1730s, you had another slave revolt at Stony, the Stony Revolt in South Carolina, near Charleston, South Carolina. So there's also been a history of resistance to slavery, some 250 slave revolts. I'd like to also mention, if we move on, in 1831, we had the Nat Turner Revolt. We had in 1839, we had the revolt on the Amistad ship, when many when slaves took over the ship and was accidentally steered back to the U.S., where John Quincy Adams, through his legal efforts, were able to free them, and they were able to return to Africa. And then in 1841, we had the Creole ship, which some 135 Africans took over the ship and went back to Africa. And of course, in 1859, we had the John Brown revolt, which is also significant because John Brown was a white man leading a revolt at Harper's Ferry. All this leading up to the Civil War. You also had a passive resistance. You had in Pennsylvania in the late 1780s that created the abolitionist movement, and that movement was to try to free the slaves through legal means or to help them as they flee from the north, from the south to the north, and also into Canada. So if I look again, if we look around, going back a little bit back to the Revolutionary War, which was a significant point in history, the first person to die in the Revolutionary War was an African American, Crispus Attucks. And also after that, we had a revolt among church members who could not worship in white churches or had to worship at the back. Absalom Jones and Richard Allen actually created the African Episcopal Church, as well as some other churches too that were black only. And so we moved then into into the 1800s. And I mentioned one of the issues of the slave revolts that Haiti had become free as well, the first African-American nation to actually free itself from the French. And they're still kind of paying for that today because it seems that is not forgotten that a black nation actually freed itself. And so as we move even into the 1850s, we have the Dred Scott case, 1857, which again cemented the role of blacks to be slaves and took away their citizenship as well. And then we move into 1861, where we have the Civil War, and then in 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation, and also the 54th Military Regiment of Black soldiers to also help to end the war. And then in 1865, the war finally ends.
Hello, Lansing area community, and happy Juneteenth. My name is Ernest Connerly, an elementary school teacher with the East Lansing School District. And I'm going to be continuing the Juneteenth history timeline, beginning with the road to Juneteenth. In the 1800s, free states of the North and slave states of the South continued their uncompromising differences over the power of the federal government to prohibit slavery in territories that had not become states. This all culminated when Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860, pledging to keep slavery out of the territories. Immediately following his election, 7 slaveholding states from the Deep South seceded from the Union in order to preserve their way of life, creating the Confederate States of America. In 1863, seeking to preserve the Union, weaken the Southern resistance, and strengthen the Union forces, Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing slaves from bondage, and the 7 states are part of the Confederacy. About 2 years later, in 1865, General Robert S. Lee from the Confederacy surrendered to Union Forces General Ulysses S. Grant, effectively ending the Civil War. A couple months, on June 18th of 1865, General Gordon Granger arrived in a remote part of Texas known as Galveston to enforce the Emancipation Proclamation. On June 19th of 1865, he issued General Order Number 3, stating, "The people of Texas are hereby informed, in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free." Newly freed slaves commemorated this in their best dress with music and dancing and barbecued food. This day has come to be known as Juneteenth. Following that, the first official Juneteenth celebration would be held on June 19th of 1866 in Galveston, Texas, and other small cities in Texas. Between 1865 and 1870, Congress passed 3 amendments or Reconstruction Amendments. The first, the 13th Amendment, to abolish slavery in the U.S. and all of its territories. The 14th Amendment, protecting the civil and political liberties. And finally, the 15th Amendment, giving the right to vote to enslaved men. Juneteenth spreads. During the Great Migration, starting in the 1940s, ending in about the 1970s, about 5 million African Americans would leave the state of Texas, taking with them their Juneteenth tradition, spreading this celebration all across America. In 1968, during the People's Poor Campaign in Washington, D.C., civil rights leader Ralph Abernathy encouraged African Americans to rededicate themselves to the Juneteenth celebration. In the 1980s, Juneteenth becomes a Texas state official holiday, the first state to do so. In 1997, the U.S. Congress would pass legislation making Juneteenth Independence Day an official U.S. holiday. June of 2005, Michigan's own governor, Jennifer Granholm, signs legislation recognizing Juneteenth as a Michigan official state holiday. June 20th of 2009, Barack Obama would be elected the first African American president of the United States. A lot to be celebrated. June 19, 2015, the nation commemorated 150 years since the emancipation in Texas Juneteenth. Asked what is the historical significance of Juneteenth, one can only think it is a far cry from celebratory. That justice and freedom would reach a group of people 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was issued, a few months after the ending of the Civil War. However, something is to be said when a group of people respond to good news and a celebratory act, instead of anger and disdain towards people who willfully continue to hold them against their wills years after they were freed. Our ancestors showed us that very day that although the days had been long and hard, freedom had been nothing but a dream, the battle for justice would be far from over. But taking the time to share a meal and enjoy some music, and enjoy one another's company is a far greater reward than the message General Granger delivered to them that fateful day. In 2020, we are celebrating 155 years of Juneteenth celebration, 155 years since the emancipation of those Texas slaves. We still are here to commemorate the freedom for that last group of enslaved people. As we continue this fight, let this Juneteenth be a reminder that 155 years later, Black Americans are still fighting against the weights of racism, prejudice, discrimination, social injustice, suppression, and police brutality. Though all the hurdles and roadblocks and evil forces, we must find a way to triumph. We must come together, put aside our differences, and celebrate one another's year after year, because the battle for freedom is still being fought. We need to celebrate just as our ancestors once did. When the celebration is over, we can always go back, pick up where we left off, and continue that fight that started 150 years ago. Let us engrave our ancestors' fights in our hearts, use their sacrifice as the force behind our mission, their determination as the mechanism to start a conversation about true freedom, true justice, and true equality. Most importantly, to bring us together for the rights of a Black individual to be seen as equal in this country.
My name is Deborah Plummer, and I'll be talking about the Lansing Juneteenth celebration, but specifically the history of the Lansing Juneteenth Committee and the festival, how things were started, who started it, and how we arrived at 27 years later with the festival that we have today. So it's my pleasure to present this information because I was intimately involved in the vision and also served as chairperson of the committee for the first 13 years and have worked on numerous Juneteenth committees as we formed them. So it's my pleasure to do this for you. So the Lansing Juneteenth celebration, it began in 1993. And it was the vision of Gordon Haskins, who was a longtime member of the Mass Memorial CME Church in Lansing. And Mr. Haskins celebrated Juneteenth as a young person. He was originally from Douglasville, Texas. And if you're familiar with Juneteenth celebrations in Texas, you know they really closed down the whole state. And it is truly a celebration. I've heard that it goes from a full day to a week, so they truly celebrate. But with it being, Texas being the last known state to free the enslaved, I can understand why that it is so prominent there. But you know what? It's also prominent in Lansing. And so as a result, Mr. Haskins' vision was that the Lansing community would be educated on Juneteenth, the history, why it exists, what happened, and then all of those details. And so in order for him to be able to get that vision off the ground, he knew that he needed a person with some specific characters to bring this about. So what he was looking for was someone with some good organizational skills, some good research skills, someone that knew how to kind of project long range, because he really wanted, once this celebration started, he really was looking for it to endure through the times in the Lansing community. So Mr. Haskins sought my help when I actually had just moved back from California. I am a longtime Lansing resident, was born in Lansing, had been away for 15 years at the time when I moved back. And he really caught me right before I started working, and a lot of things were on my plate. And so probably for him, the best time to catch me. But he sought my assistance and shared that vision with me and asked how we would go about getting this off the ground. And so we talked about it quite a bit. One of his questions directly to me is, had I celebrated Juneteenth and did I know what it was? And I could answer both of those with a yes, because when I lived in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Milwaukee had a big celebration, closed a section of their city down, and celebrated Juneteenth over a 3-day period. So it was a fabulous celebration, but I also had the opportunity to talk to many friends and ask them, you know, what is this holiday? I kind of have heard about it. I don't know all of the details. Some of my friends were from the South, and they shared in detail with me the history of Juneteenth. And it did stay in the back of my mind. I thought it was a fabulous celebration. When I went to California, of course, Los Angeles celebrated it really big. And so I could answer his questions, well, yes, I know what it is, and I have celebrated it. So from there began our start. And the first celebration was here at Mass Memorial. It wasn't a big celebration, but we just really wanted to get the membership involved and also friends and families that may be invited, but just to kind of share what the intention was with this first celebration about how we wanted to move it further into the city and how were we going to do that. So the first celebration, we had a speaker that was from Texas, a friend of Mr. Haskins, and that was our first speaker. And that was in 1993. And then that was under the minister at Mass Memorial at the time would have been Reverend Sterling Littlejohn. So that's kind of the very start. That was the vision, that's where it started. And Mr. Haskins was very specific about his vision. He wanted it taught, he wanted this history taught, he wanted it understood. And so, but he wanted us to celebrate also, you know, to have the enjoyment of the celebration, but he really wanted the understanding to be there of what this history is all about. So that's how we started. So after seeing the interest with our membership, we formed our first committee. And I conducted a meeting for Mr. Haskins, and the goal of the group initially was just to teach the history of the holiday. And the original committee consisted of the following members from Mass Memorial CME Church: Gordon Haskins, myself, Deborah Plummer, Mary Plummer, Marilyn Plummer, Marcia Plummer, Jim Hughes, Charles Johnson, Jerry Wynn Skates, Rodney Shepard, Dalton Tanzel, Edwin Thompson, and Earl Chapman were all original members of that very first committee. And this was again under the leadership of Reverend Sterling Littlejohn. Our first 7 festivals from 1994 to 2001 were held here at the church grounds. The church has a lot of property. We wanted to make use of it. Wanted to be a picnic, to be a comfortable festival. So we did everything we needed to do right here on the church grounds. We had the music, we had fashion shows, we had our vendors from front to back. Basically everything took place right here on 5601 South Waverly. And it was very enjoyable, very close-knit. People really liked the feeling of that picnic style relationship. People brought their families and they stayed the whole day, and we you know, as the committee looked at it and thought more and more, at some point we knew we were busting at the seams. And so under the leadership of our pastor at that time, who was Reverend Lyndon Ford, we met some more and we kind of discussed what we were going to need to do as far as to start handling, to contain the numbers of people that were attending Juneteenth. But it was really a pleasure because we had the horses here. I mean, everything that you could have at any outside festivity we had here. The favorites for most people was the barbecue. We did our own barbecuing here. The potato salad, the chicken. Reese's, who used to be here, helped us do our chicken. And we just really had an old-fashioned festival. And it was the best. It was the best. You can ask anyone who was here during those times. Many of the churches in the area throughout the city of Lansing, many of the members of the churches were here. And people raved really about the food, about the tradition. The thing that we really wanted to share was the tradition. So we tried to make sure that the festival included all of the traditional elements: the fried fish, the barbecue, the barbecue chicken, and the potato salad, the baked beans, and on and on and on. But we tried to make sure the sports, just everything from the traditional aspect was there. Because when you're teaching a history, the best way to teach it is to really be able to portray how it was. And so, but due to the increase in the attendance, we were, like I said, busting at the seams. We, at that point, needed to make some decisions, so the committee began to look for local parks, which could accommodate the celebration. So on June 30th, 2001, the celebration was moved to the Riverfront Park in downtown Lansing. We liked the Riverfront Park, but it just didn't have the total feel of what we were looking for. So over the next 3 to 4 years, 2002 to 2005. We had it at Benjamin Davis Park, which is located on the south end of Lansing. We liked Benjamin Davis Park, but no sooner than we had that park, some things improved at that park, then they started, things started getting scheduled during our Juneteenth period of time that we had to have the park scheduled. So then we took another look at what would be a comfortable place for us, some place where we could be really a part of the African American community. And then our eye took the mark of St. Joe Park. And as of the 2006 year, we have celebrated at the St. Joe Park, and pretty much have been there ever since. And that is the center of the African American community. It was known as the West Side of Lansing. And that's where we all lived. That's where we all went to church. That's where our neighbors were. And so we, in appreciation for where we started, we went right back to one of the largest park, one of the nicest parks, I would say, in the city of Lansing, to St. Joe Park. So during the tenure of Reverend Lyndon B. Ford, the committee opened up the membership to include community representation to service committee members. And we did this because we wanted to keep the celebration fresh, wanted to make sure we had always a good stream of new ideas coming in, our entertainment was also increasing at the time, so we wanted to make sure that we had all of the elements that it took to continue to operate on a larger scale, and this took more people. So we opened it up, and at that time we brought in the following individuals who were the first community members that came onto the committee, and this was right around 2004.
Continuing 150 years of freedom, celebrating Juneteenth here in this great city of Lansing, Michigan. I'm Mary Gibbs, and I'm also on the Education Committee for Juneteenth. I'm going to share with you our purpose statement, talk about the educational categories for the essay contest, and give you the criteria at the end, the guidelines. Our purpose is to provide a positive learning experience through educating local youth on the historical significance of Juneteenth through research, developing essays, writing skills, building self-confidence to acquire scholastic awards and grants to pursue higher educational opportunities. There have been 13 essay contests conducted since the program began. The essay contest was put together by 3 outstanding individuals, Sonia Lewis, A. Richard Doss, and the artist Julian Van Dyke, upon completion of the Juneteenth Coloring and Activity book. Over the years, as the Education Committee members became part of the Juneteenth Education Subcommittee, more tools were added, such as preparing the essay workshop to focus in on the Juneteenth history and essay writing. Our essays have developed into 4 different categories. The first category is Category 1, and Category 1 is for grades 6, 7, and 8. The essay length is 300 to 400 words, and the award is $100 for first place and $50 for second place. The essay content should include what is Juneteenth, and which family member or adult did you talk to about Juneteenth, and how was the history explained to you? Category 2. This category is for grades 9th and 10th. The essay length is 400 to 500 words. First place is $200. Second place is $150. The essay contents: what is Juneteenth? Why do we celebrate this event? And reflect on why it is important that people in America and other countries continue to cultivate knowledge and appreciation of their freedoms, not only on Juneteenth, but every day. Category 3. Category 3 is for the 11th and 12th grade. Their essay content is 500 to 600 words. First place is $400. Second place, $250. Each winner will get a gift certificate to Rush Investment Unlimited to help prepare them to pursue other avenues to pay for their post-secondary education. The content includes: what is Juneteenth? What is the historical significance celebrating Juneteenth today? And what connections can be drawn between Juneteenth and modern-day social justice movements? The final category is Category 4. This is the Olivet College Academic Talent Scholarship, and it is for grades 11th and 12th. Their essay should be 500 to 600 words. The first place scholarship winner receives $15,000. Second place receives $12,000. Their essay should include: what is the historical context that led to Juneteenth? What is Juneteenth, and why is celebrating it more important today than ever before? Draw a connection between the Juneteenth celebration of freedom and other cultural celebrations of freedom or independence. Now, each essay must be the student's original work. Plagiarism will not be accepted. The essay must be complete and formatted per the student's application checklist, which is found on the bottom of the application. The type should be in 12 or 14 point, and it should be Times New Roman or area. The essay should be double-spaced with a bibliography listing all references used. The word count cannot be less than or exceed the category range. The essay must have a title and stay on topic. Essays will be judged on the content and correct use of grammar, spelling, punctuation, and originality. The essay should not include maps, drawings, pictures, or graphics. Any student who has previously won an award is ineligible for entry into this year's contest unless that participant is moving to a new category. For example, from Category 1 to Category 2, Category 3, 4, or 4. Awarding of the Academic Talent Scholarship Category 3 only is based on the student's ability to be admitted to and subsequently attend Olivet College. To be considered for admission to Olivet College, the students must complete an application for admission to Olivet College, which can be done at www.olivetcollege.edu. Students must submit their original high school transcript. Students must submit their official ACT or SAT scores. Admission is based on a combination of the student's cumulative high school GPA and ACT or SAT. Students will be considered for admission after all official requested admissions documents are submitted to the admissions office. Students in 11th and 12th grade can only apply for one scholarship. either the Category 3 Juneteenth Academic Scholarship or Category 4 Olivet Talent Scholarship. With the help of and support of our sponsors and partners, the Juneteenth Essay Contest has been a success. Now, for information on our scholarship programs, Leonard Rusher from Rusher Investment Unlimited will cover that information.
Hello, I'm Leonard Rusher. I am a scholarship consultant. I consult scholarships here in the Lansing and Detroit area. And my main purpose to serve with the Juneteenth Education Committee is to just to bring insight on the community of scholarships. I'm going to talk to you about scholarships versus grants, the scholarship cycle, how to apply for scholarships, and the Juneteenth scholarship and Olivet scholarship opportunity. First, the scholarships versus grants. What's the difference between grants and scholarships is that both of them are awards amounts of money, and they are money that does not have to be paid back. The difference lies in that a grant is money that's either awarded to people or an organization or even an individual. For scholarship, that money is just awarded to students, hence scholarships. So that's the main difference right there. The scholarship cycle. The scholarship cycle is the reason that organizations do what they do, and it does fall into a cycle. So let's just start from the beginning. Let's just assume we have a company, A, B, and C, that wants to offer a scholarship to the local community. Normally, the cycle will start beginning on September 1st. And the application will be open normally for 90 days. So from September 1st to December 1st is roughly 90 days. Then, once the applications are received, the judges will then review the application. Now, that time frame can be anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 weeks. So now we have just went from December 1st to January 15th. Again, depending on how large the scholarship is, or how many applicants they have, or even just the availability of the judges. So now it's January 15th. And from there, the applicant is notified that they are a winner of the award of the scholarship. From that point, it's still a series of things that need to take place. The applicant is notified either by telephone, but mostly by a letter, saying that you are a recipient. And in that letter is still some other further requirements that need to be done. And the main thing that is required is that the student must provide a document which is called proof of enrollment, or even your list of classes that the student signed up for the next year. And that document will not be produced to roughly about the 1st of May, 15th of May, or even the 1st of June. So again, you can see the entire cycle of the scholarship circle. So once that document is produced, again, the 1st of May, that is sent in by the student. The organization then will in turn send in the check. The check will either go to the student or even go to the school. So as you can see, this is almost a 9-month cycle. So that's why you need to understand how the cycle works, because there are a lot of people always looking for scholarships roughly around the April timeframe, and really they're too late. So now how do you prepare for a scholarship? Preparing for the scholarship is just certain things you just really need to realize. First, who are you when applying for the scholarship? Are you African American male? Are you African American female? Those are different types of scholarships. The other thing is, what traumatic or great experience that you've been through. And those are different types of scholarships that are out there. Give you an example. I had one student who lost his little brother to cancer. And so when I found that out, we actually sit down and we found a whole list of different type of cancer organizations that provide scholarship. So he fell into that category. All right. From there, you need to look at where else can I find them. It's an open book. You can look even beginning in your house. If you look in your kitchen and you see all the groceries that's there, from Kellogg's, from Post, from Pepsi, from Oscar Mayer, you will see that there's scholarships. One time I sat with a coworker in Panera Bread talking about scholarships, and I said, let's just see if Panera Bread has scholarships. We looked on the website, and there it was. So where the scholarships are, just pay attention. Wherever the scholarships are, chances are they are there. Now that we did that, the preparation of the scholarship is just a series of documents that you need to get ready, because pretty much every application or requirement is the same. One, we're looking for your transcripts. Mainly also sometimes we're looking for a resume, or we're looking for an ATC score or SAT score. So these are just some of the documents that you need to have ready, and just make series of copies of them. And so now from that point, it becomes an assembly line. And once you master that, after you get into your 4th, 5th, or 6th application, now it becomes easy clockwork and the stress is taken away. And so these are the type of services that I provide. But now let's go into the Juneteenth Scholarship and the Olivet Scholarship. Our whole purpose here is to enlighten our community about Juneteenth. And so one of the things we look at as part of giving back to the people of our community. So that's why the Juneteenth Scholarship exists. And the same thing for the Olivet Scholarship, because Olivet is here located near the Lansing area, and we're trying to find minority students. This is why this scholarship exists, because the whole purpose of a scholarship is to allow a student to attend a college to unlock their dreams. So this is the whole story on how scholarships work, and I'm very thankful I had the opportunity to tell you our story about scholarships.